Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name's Thomas, back with another player review today, joined by Terry McAllister from the Toffee Blues again. Today, reviewing a player that kind of broke onto the scene post-lockdown, really. Didn't see much of him before, football was suspended. Anthony Gordon, obviously a player that's come through the academy. Made a couple of, random substitute appearances, one against West Ham, maybe one against Leicester, I think. I think they were the two appearances he made. I don't think anyone really had any impressions of him kind of kicking on yet. He obviously came into the team after the lockdown, as I mentioned, did very well, in my opinion. Definitely did what was asked of him and looked one of our brightest sparks. But obviously, we start off all these player reviews to kind of talking about our impressions going into it. Did you have any impressions really coming out of the lockdown of Anthony Gordon coming into the team at all?
Not go. You mean going into the Project Restart games? Like after
Yeah.
No, to be honest, I was a lot cooler on him than a lot of people were. He was very hotly anticipated, I think, by a lot of people, and I didn't get it at first. I was just like, this lad who's come on, And I mean, I remember the West Ham appearance. It did do nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. I didn't think he was a bad player or anything, but I thought, I don't see it. What's everyone so excited for? And then obviously after the lockdown games, he's picked for the derby, and I was like, that's brave. Not the occasion getting to him, but I thought Liverpool have got some good players. They could get the better of this kid, and it wouldn't be his fault. You know what I mean? But he acquitted himself well there. Didn't get much of a chance to show what he could do, attacking wise, which is fair enough. Playing Liverpool, very good team, and all that. But when he played in the Leicester game and he got the assist for Richarlison, you saw a lot more of what he was about, and then started to get it. And I was like, oh, okay, this kid has got something about him. And then he kicked on from there, and there was every game he played, he just made the rest of the midfielders look awful. Like they just looked like 2 yards slower than him, and they just had less energy. They had no impetus the same way he did. And there was games where he was shunted into the centre of midfield in a 4-4-2, and he still looked better than £45 million players who were playing there. And yeah, he started the lockdown as just like, this prospective kid. Ancelotti's mentioned him a few times. It's, might get a few sub appearances. See how it goes. To going into next season, I could see him feasibly being the first choice pick at left midfield, because he's definitely done more than the other two options there in recent games. So, fair play to the lads. He's come in, he's grasped his chance. He said, I'm getting in this team and I'm not coming out of it unless, as long as it's up to me. And, good player. It's always nice to see young, lads coming through, and he has surprised me, because I didn't get it at first. I didn't see why he was, I didn't think he was shit or anything, but I just thought, why is everyone excited over him? He doesn't look half as good as Tom Davies did when he came through, but then that sort of made me a little bit nervous to pump him up. But he played very well, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him.
Yeah, definitely what I think is quite interesting about him. He did something similar to what we saw kind of Calvert-Lewin do at the start of this season, when he kind of went through that summer of a lot more physical training. He improved his stature, etc. And then kind of we saw with Gordon when he went into lockdown, I think he locked himself down with a personal trainer or something like that. And there was a lot of talk about it in like articles saying that he'd kind of just gone through this boot camp throughout lockdown, and clearly to improve his physicality, which, as we know, is a massive part of the Premier League. And clearly it's worked well for him. Before, he was making substitute appearances, when, your players were tiring in games, and he could come on, less physicality involved. He could kind of use his trick, reuse his pace. Now, obviously, Ancelotti's been impressed with the physical work he's done. He's now trusted him to start, which says a lot about his progress. And obviously, that's what kind of we're seeing Moise Kean do at the moment. Clearly, there's a bit of a trend throughout players who are trying to break through. I'm pleased he did it. Clearly, there will have been other things as well, maybe confidence, things like that, why he wasn't like starting before. But clearly, the physicality has a massive role to play in it. And I think what we need to talk about now is he did play well, when he came in, but for some reason he didn't kind of start every game as I think a lot of fans really wanted him to. Like when he played the first couple of games really well, and this is potentially Ancelotti not wanting him to overexpose him when the season was effectively done. Didn't want to risk him. Kind of, what did you see that? Because people were wanting him, to start every game, but he wasn't at the end of the day. Like he played a few, then kind of dropped off as the season went on. What did you kind of put that down to?
clever manager. Having a clever manager, he's seen a lot of kids come through in his career, and he knows how to use them and how to introduce them and when not to use them. I think everyone, myself included, at times in the post-lockdown games, just wanted to see him start every game. You know, when Europe disappeared, I think everyone was just like, sod it, just play Branthwaite every game, play Gordon every game, play Keane every game. But Ancelotti's been doing this a long time, and he obviously thought it's not the way to go for them, especially for Anthony Gordon. He was like, he is a lot better than the rest of my midfielders, but you've got it in one there. I don't want to overexpose him. Don't want to, put him in a position where, he starts to lose form, or, he gets built up too much by, the outside press looking for a story because there's not much going on at Everton. Whatever the reason, was a good thing because every time he came on, he performed, and that is clever management, because if it had been left up to us, we'd have just played him every game and it might not have been what was best for him. And who knows? Like, you could have put him in, he could have done even better, but you've got to just trust. You're going to have a manager as experienced as Ancelotti, you're going to have to trust him with things like that, aren't you? He's seen, all due respect to Anthony Gordon, he's managed young players who are better than him, some of the best in the game.
Yeah, and he came in on the left midfield, playing that role that Bernard played a couple of times, coming in off the left into a central midfield role, like central attack midfield role. I think coming up in the under-23s, he did play quite centrally. I think that's where he prefers to play, kind of maybe sometimes as a second striker, sometimes at that number 10. He showed what he could do right midfield as well. There was times even when we had to defend where he kind of just drifted into the centre a bit more as that kind of central midfield role. So he's shown he can play left, right, centre, central attacking, maybe even as a second striker, but which isn't what we've seen him yet, but he did play that for the under-23s. If he does start next season, where do you really kind of see him fitting into the team?
Well, there's a lot of places up for grabs, isn't there? I mean, I've said before that when young players come through, unless like their position that they play is like just there waiting for them, I think young players, especially attacking young players, should be looking to just get in the team wherever and just say, look at where they can slot in the team and just grab hold of it as tight as they can and go, that's mine. So if I'm Anthony Gordon, I'm looking at the Everton team and going, I did better than the two left midfielders when I came on, but there are two left midfielders. There's only one right midfielder, and he's older than the two left midfielders. So if I'm Anthony Gordon, a forward who can play off the wing, I'd be saying, right, that right-hand side's mine. I might not be as good there as I am up front. I might not be as good there as I am on the left, but I'm good enough to get in there and start. He could start every game if he makes that right-hand side his own. Whereas he's competing with two, highly paid, expensive players, and that shouldn't really count for something, but it does if he's on the left. Leon Osman is a good example. Leon Osman at no point probably would have said, I like playing right midfield, but he played there for years before he ended up getting moved into the middle of the pitch. He was a number 10 in his own head, I'm sure, but he played on the right of midfield for half his Everton career. And in the double pivot of a 4-2-3-1, we'd never play number 10 because we had Fellaini or Cahill or whoever. So he went his whole Everton career without probably playing in his ideal position. But he had a whole Everton career where he was a consistent starter. I'd like to see, Gordon look at it like that. I mean, he could. There's a lot of places. I mean, right wing is probably his easiest path in. Left wing's where we've seen him the most, and he could just force out one of the other two players, and that's that. Or it could be, later in the season if there's injuries to players, you could see him going up front. If Richarlison gets moved out wide, or he gets an injury, or Keane gets an injury, you could see Gordon playing off Calvert-Lewin at times, or something like that. Like, probably not as a number 9, but he's got it in his locker to be that auxiliary fourth choice striker if it's needed. And I'm sure he'd acquit himself there. So he's a very useful player to have. He can play right across that attacking, sector of the pitch. But the short version is I'd like to see him grab hold to the right midfield if we don't bring anyone in and just say, that's mine, and I'm going to play there and I'm going to make it my own.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's interesting, though, about his development now is he is clearly an attacking player. He's not your traditional 4-4-2 left or right midfielder, but obviously in Ancelotti's system, if you play off the left, you drift into the middle. We've seen Bernard do it. I'm sure that's what Iwobi wants to do, to be honest. We seem to have kind of ended up with 3 left midfielders who would prefer to drift centrally, and we've seen Iwobi on the right, and he's really struggled in the restart. Clearly not in a role that he prefers. So I think it's interesting that I agree that he should kind of take any position that he can get and just make it his own, because that is your pathway into the team. Would we see the best out of him there? Probably not, because he is a more forward-thinking player, and the right midfielder in Ancelotti's system is traditionally asked to do more defending than attacking, basically, which is what we saw from Iwobi, sometimes even Sidibe. But so that's what I'm kind of torn on myself. Would we see the best out of him on the right? Probably not. But as he said, it just depends what position's going, really. If he wants to break into the team, that's what he's got to do. So it's definitely an interesting thought that, just take any position you can, then see what happens from there. I think it is very much dependent if the club bring in a right midfielder. They very publicly said, it was like at the EGM when when Brand's got out his presentation, wasn't it? And it was like we're after a right back and a right midfielder, which was a remarkable thing to do. But the club have been very public about the pursuit of a right midfielder. We haven't really been linked with one. That's the thing. We're linked with plenty of right backs, plenty of centre backs, plenty of centre midfielders. I don't even think I've seen us linked with an out-and-out right winger yet, which is remarkable. Bear in mind, this is what the club say they want. Maybe the transfer strategy's changed. Maybe they were originally thinking when they wanted a right midfielder that they were going to play the 4-2-3-1. That five-man midfield, and they didn't have to be defensive. Now in a right midfield in Ancelotti's system, you have to have defensive capabilities. So maybe they are still looking for a right winger, but kind of in a different mould. Not kind of the same players that they were looking for before. So we'll have to see how that goes, really. I hope he does kind of kick on next season, wherever it may be. I hope he's not a player that just kind of fades away. But one thing I think we should kind of end up on, and you touched on it yourself, is not overhyping a player. Yeah, he's done very well in the restart. But also, we shouldn't get carried away with him. He shouldn't be in the team all the time, as Ancelotti kind of decided. We don't want to overexpose him. We don't want to, we don't want him to get an injury straight away. It is still a physical league. He is still a very young player. We don't want everyone to get too excited about him, as you said with the story. How do you kind of generally see his development next season? Do you think he is going to make more substitute appearances? And do you think that'll be good for him? Because, it lessens the hype and almost lets him develop kind of out of the spotlight, really.
It depends. Much like with every player, it depends what we do in the market. I've just been thinking as you were talking then, I said play him on the right because of the other two players for the left, but the other two players are fit for all the post-lockdown games, and they were the ones put on the right and Gordon on the left. So it could be, there's not a question of him going on the right. He's playing on the left, and the other two have got to get on with it. So I think we'll see more of him. I think we'll start the season, and he'll be the same sort of boat that he's in now when he starts some games, bench for the others. But all things being, if he carries on playing the way he's playing, then he's going to end up starting more and more games as the season goes on, and he could end up, second half of the season, or maybe even from early on in the season, cementing a position in the team. Maybe it is on the left, and one of the other two have got to find a way out the club because, the transfer window's open for a long time. It's open till 5th of October, and then I think it's another 2 weeks for domestic deals. So it's a long time, and if you're one of the, other players, and Anthony Gordon's ahead of you, then you think young local lad who's got time on his side. I'm going to struggle to get back in this team here. Could push someone out the door. Who knows? But I'd like to see him carried on the way he's going, gently, and then as he grows and learns, see him more regularly and more stable and more cemented in the first team. I can see him finishing the season as a regular starter. Injury permitting and what have you.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, I think it's really important not to overhype him. Let him kind of carry on his development as he has. Obviously, he kind of came into an ideal situation for a young player, really. No fans at the stadium. There's a lot less pressure on the players when there are no fans there. There'll be no fans at the start of this season, I'd imagine. I think that's kind of been confirmed. They will eventually come back, and it won't have a form that may be. But I think it's almost benefited him in a way that he doesn't have that instant pressure from the Goodison crowd or an away crowd. We've seen the same for Michael Keane. Obviously, very different players, but Keane was a lot better without any fans. He clearly felt, the pressure was kind of off him a bit. It works for Gordon, so I'll be interested to see. Not necessarily. I'll be interested to see how he performs when fans are back in the stadium. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but he has made his breakout without anyone there, which massively benefited him, I think. Again, another player. That's pretty much it. Kind of didn't play for the majority of the season. Came as a couple of substitute appearances. Then all of a sudden, in this, in the the crazy football period didn't even feel like football really. It didn't really feel like the Premier League. He's made his breakout and given Ancelotti another option for next season that he might not have thought that he would have had, back in March really. So it'll be interesting to see his development. That's pretty much it from me. Have you got anything else to add?
No. I mean, exciting young player. Look forward to seeing more of him. So he can carry on with his development.
Yeah, definitely. So, as always, do let us know what you think about Anthony Gordon down in the comments. Where do you see him fitting in at the side next season? We'll say we are going to play a 4-4-2, so where do you kind of see him fitting into that system? Do you think he should be starting every game? Do you think he should be coming on as a sub with occasional starts? Do let us know what you think. Obviously, thanks to Terry for joining me again. Thank you all very much for watching. Check out all our social media in the description. Check out all the other player reviews we've done on. We are almost at the end, but there are plenty more up on the channel. Check out the daily 24/7 videos where we go through rumours. We mentioned there sign a right midfielder. Maybe there'll be a rumour about that starts at some point. So check out those videos every day to keep up with all the latest transfer news and rumours. And thank you all very much for watching, and join us next time on the Toffee Blues.